I'd like to begin this talk with a photo demonstration. Please be advised, this demonstration contains graphic images of Italian foods being violated and may be disturbing for Italian viewers and self-described cultured gastronomes. Viewer discretion is advised. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is how you get the death penalty in Italy. There's a saying I learned while I was in Italy studying abroad my junior year. Every time somebody puts pineapple on pizza, an Italian dies. Now, if this were true, then after all the images I have just shown, there likely aren't many Italians left in Italy. While putting pineapple on pizza might be offensive to many Italians, particularly the pizza-proud Neapolitans, the food faux pas that I have just shown are each considered to be near universally blasphemous culinary sins. For context, what the 7 deadly sins are to Christianity, these sins are to Italian gastronomy. The thing is, the food rules in Italy might seem unnecessary and arbitrary to outsiders, including myself when I first arrived. Many of them are in fact quite senseful when understood in context. As I came to learn, the cultural Italian food norms are rooted in some serious and well-understood principles in math, science, logic, and even have deep historical and cultural roots. Take, for example, the infamous cappuccino rule. In Italy, a cappuccino is more or less strictly considered a breakfast drink. After about 11 a.m. or so, it's not to be consumed until the following morning. Now, the strict adherence to punctuality in this regard varies from region to region, with some northern Italians occasionally having a cappuccino as an afternoon snack, but the point is that it is predominantly considered a breakfast drink that is not to be consumed in the afternoon, and especially anywhere close to a meal. Why, you ask? Well, you see, Italians are obsessed with digestion. They think about it a lot. As such, they've come to the conclusion that the large amount of milk in a cappuccino can be heavy on the stomach, making it the ideal breakfast drink to fill you up in the morning when little to no food is consumed besides a pastry. For the same reason, it's a poor choice of beverage after a meal, when your stomach is already full of food. And if, God forbid, you consume a cappuccino during a meal, not only will it completely disrupt your digestion of the food, but the coffee's acidity and the milk's fattiness will completely overwhelm your palate, making it nearly impossible to fully appreciate the flavors of the meal. Now, recall the perturbing image of sprinkling Parmesan on a seafood dish. The reason this is a big no-no is similar to the reasons for not drinking a cappuccino during a meal. The strong, assertive flavor of the cheese would overpower the delicate flavors of the seafood, completely disrupting the harmony of the dish. Serving spaghetti and meatballs together also violates each dish's integrity, especially when the spaghetti is broken or cut. Now, I say each because, well, while it may be a famed Italian-American classic, spaghetti and meatballs as a dish doesn't exist in Italy, principally because they're 2 distinct dishes. For context, the spaghetti shape, long and thin, was designed with physics in mind. The proper technique is to twirl the spaghetti with a fork in order to entrap sauce as it entwines itself around the fork. When the spaghetti is broken or cut, the noodles are simply not long enough to pick up enough sauce when twirled, and thus an inferior bite is created. Additionally, when large meatballs are placed on top of spaghetti, there's no place for them on the fork after the proper twirling motion is made, and thus the meatball is squeezed out of the structure of the spaghetti. You could try and find exceptions, as I have, such as stabbing a smaller piece of the meatball with the fork and then twirling the spaghetti, but you'll likely be met with the same reply my Italian chef gave to me. Sure, and if my grandmother had wheels, she would have been a bike. It's not just in Italy, of course, that they have these cultural food rules and culinary etiquette. We have them here, too. If you eat a New York pizza with a fork and a knife, you might just end up all over the news, like former New York Mayor Bill de Blasio in 2014. This is especially true of the quintessential New York slice that's meant to be eaten casually and on the go. Using a fork and a knife to eat a slice of New York pizza can be seen as pretentious and unnecessary, much like digging into a fast food hamburger with a fork and a knife. Now, I'm not talking about those ginormous sit-down restaurant burgers that you can't remotely fit into your mouth, but a drive-through style hamburger. Be seen putting ketchup on a hot dog in Chicago, and you might just get arrested. The point is, when taken into context, these rules reflect cultural traditions and customs that are rooted in reason, science, history, and practicality, not snobbery. Just because you don't understand something, it doesn't mean it's nonsensical and pretentious. Much like in other cultures and other cuisines, the eating habits, foods, and particular food combinations come together to form the culinary grammar of Italian cuisine. As mentioned in the book Representing Italy Through Food, the elements of the culinary language are manifested in its basic units, individual foods, its processes, ways of preparing these foods, and the structure of its sentences, food pairings or the order of courses in a meal, for example. A mismatch between pasta and sauce is the equivalent of a misconjugated verb. The culinary sentence will not make sense. No one pasta suits all sauces. Pasta and sauce are inherently intertwined. For example, spaghetti bolognese, a classic Italian-American dish, doesn't translate into the Italian culinary lexicon simply because the thin spaghetti noodles are incapable of effectively capturing the thick chunks of meat in the sauce, no matter how hard they try. That's why in Bologna, the equivalent dish is made with a thicker noodle, tagliatelle, which is able to successfully and effectively capture the thick chunks of meat in the sauce within its warm embrace in a simple matter of pasta twirling geometry. Welcome to Italian Pasta Grammar 101. Those who speak fluent pasta, if you will, can correctly match pastas and sauces together with ease. For context, I consider myself conversational in pasta, about a B2 level proficiency. In a practical grammatical analogy, pairing a thin spaghetti with a thick ragu makes about as much sense as the sentence, "This morning, I ate a snow cone for breakfast." Now, let's ignore the part about my eating a snow cone for breakfast. Could you still understand what I was trying to say? Sure, but it sounds off. The mismatched verb structure is distracting and disruptive, making the sentence awkward and needlessly confusing. Now let's say I throw in a myriad of broken culinary grammar rules beyond just the simple misconjugated pasta and sauce, and the sentence would basically sound like, "I this morning ate a snow cones for breakfast." Okay, the integrity of the sentence has been seriously compromised. Verb conjugations are off, syntax is a mess, articles are mismatched, and incorrect pluralization is all over the place. In Italian culinary grammar, the way that this sentence sounds is more or less the way the seafood pasta in this photo would taste after the noodles have been cut, covered in Parmesan cheese, and doused in ketchup. The point is, context matters. Ingredients and proper combinations tell a story, much like how having a command over a language's syntax allows you to form sentences with meaning. Now, I've shared with you some of the basic grammatical rules of Italian cuisine, but in reality, every cuisine has its own grammar. In order to create a dish in the style of a specific cuisine, one must have a deep understanding of the fundamental cooking techniques, culinary rules, and the way the ingredients and spices work together in harmony. Now, I know I mentioned eating a snow cone for breakfast earlier, and I could feel the judgment. That's just not a normally acceptable thing to do in American culture for the most part. But in Sicily, it's common to have granita, an Italian icy treat that looks like a snow cone but is made with real ingredients as opposed to a mere flavored syrup on ice, paired with a brioche for breakfast. So over here, that might seem quite intense for breakfast, but over there, it's normal. Again, context matters. The grammar analogy isn't just unique to cuisine. Cultural norms often function in a similar fashion. They only make sense in context. As a result, sweeping snap judgments made towards foreign cultures that are often made without understanding context can be extremely false and out of place. Cultural norms vary widely, sometimes even contradicting one another. Take food etiquette, for example. Etiquette concerning how to respond to food being offered to you varies greatly from culture to culture. If you're at your Chinese friend's house and his mother offers you food, it's considered gracious to decline multiple times before accepting. This is known as a ritual refusal to show respect to the host and avoid seeming greedy. Now, if raised with this traditional Chinese etiquette, you might be in for a rude awakening when initially declining food at your American friend's house, for an initial decline in the US is often interpreted as genuine. Thus, after declining out of politeness and expecting them to offer twice more, but the offer never comes, you're left bewildered and hungry. What's more is if an Indian grandmother insists you eat her food and you refuse multiple times, you're not just rejecting the food. No. You're rejecting her love. So the same behavior of refusing an initial food offer is polite in Chinese culture, understandable in American culture, yet insulting in Indian culture. Think about that for a second. That's crazy. The point is that snap judgments towards a culture based on limited experience and knowledge often miss the bigger picture. Cultural differences like these still might be frustrating, but the context will illuminate the bigger picture and help you to understand the reasons for these behavioral differences. So do your best to approach unfamiliar cultures with curiosity, the same way you hopefully would with trying a new dish. Try to learn and understand the fundamentals of a culture's grammatical structure before making judgments. This is especially important in the state of our world today, with division being constantly reinforced by an us versus them mentality. People are systematically categorized and assigned predetermined beliefs and acceptable behaviors based on which box they fit into, defining who they are, what they should value, and even how they should act. Cancel culture only adds fuel to the fire. A single comment taken out of context becomes a defining label, with entire belief systems assumed and assigned that were never even expressed. This rush to judgment creates a narrative about who someone is without giving them the chance to explain, leading to unfair assumptions and complete dismissal before real dialogue can even begin. Now, the conversation is framed as good versus bad and right versus wrong, leaving no room for nuance. But the irony is that ostracizing someone for their beliefs doesn't change their mind. It only strengthens their convictions. I've used Italian food rules as the centerpiece of this talk because food is something we can all relate to. We all have to eat, even if our eating habits and taste preferences might vary significantly. It isn't fair to judge an entire cuisine based on one dish or eating habit. And by that same metric, it isn't fair to judge someone's character based on a single aspect of their identity or culture. If someone disagrees with you on an issue you care deeply about, try to take the time to learn their history, beliefs, and reasons for their perspective before making a sweeping judgment about them. By asking thoughtful questions like what they mean by certain words or why they prioritize certain actions, you can open the door to respectful, intellectually stimulating discourse. Curiosity and open-mindedness can reveal surprising insights about people, cultures, and even yourself, reminding us that Simon Sinek was right all along. It's not just what we do, but why we do it. The world is seldom black and white. There's almost always a reason why people and cultures believe or behave a certain way, or why particular food rules exist. After being in Italy and learning these food rules firsthand, they all make a lot more sense contextually. I don't break or cut my spaghetti because I respect the way the noodle was designed. As a pastry cook, I understand that fresh oven-baked bread is supposed to rest for 30 minutes so it can develop a better texture. That being said, warm, freshly baked bread with butter is one of life's greatest pleasures, so I usually tear into it right out of the oven. So sometimes I choose to abide by the conventional wisdom and food rules, and other times I deliberately choose not to, with the point being that I understand the context and reasoning first, allowing me to make an informed decision. Look, at the end of the day, you have the agency to eat what you want, believe whatever you want, and converse with whomever you want. But if you approach differences with curiosity and an open mind, the same way you'd hope others would do for you, with your unconventional food preferences, quirky eating habits, and hot takes and controversial opinions, you might just be surprised. And I truly believe that if everyone approached differences this way and withheld sweeping character judgments and decisive opinions until we understood further context, the world would be a much better place, so long as we can still all agree to ban cappuccinos after 11 a.m. Thank you.